Hey everyone, welcome back. It is Icon. Thank you so much for checking out another episode of Esports Analysis. Today, we are taking a look at, we're going to wrap up CDL Chicago. We're going to talk about power rankings, everything in today's video. We're going to start by taking a look at the bracket, and the first thing that you might want to notice is that when it came to both semifinal matches and the final match, I got all of them right. I correctly picked Dallas to win this. I think on my last video, I got a ton of people saying that I was delusional, saying there's no way that Dallas wins this, saying that Chicago is going to beat Dallas and all that. And I don't know, this is just kind of how I felt it was going to go based on some of the troubles that Chicago was having, based on some of the troubles that Atlanta was having, especially in respawns with teams like New York earlier in the weekend. So if we go through this just kind of match by match, I'm not going to take forever because we all watched it, but I do want to just go ahead and show the results. So the first matchup was Atlanta here. So we had Atlanta versus Seattle, and I just put them up on screen, but pretty much this wasn't really all that competitive. This is something, so for me, I think that right here in the middle, this search and destroy is really promising for Seattle. So remember, it was only a couple months ago where search and destroy for Seattle was absolutely atrocious. And if you're a Seattle fan, if you follow that team, or even if you're just a fan of the league, I think that this is something that's really good to see. Now, in respawns, they just don't have the firepower, especially they don't have the SMG Slayers that a lot of these other teams do. They don't have the Simp. They don't have the Mac Melts. I think you should put him in that conversation. They don't have the Envoy. They don't have the Abizi, right? They don't have that caliber SMG yet. I think they were hoping that Pander was going to be able to bring a little bit more firepower, and he hasn't really shown that yet. But in Search and Destroy, this is promising for them because if they can perform in Search and Destroy, then they'll be able to hold their own against teams that aren't those top four, right? If you're talking like London, or if you're talking Paris, or maybe even like New York, even though they look good, but especially like Toronto, LAG, OGLA, Seattle should start to be able to hold their own against those teams because of what they can do in Search and Destroy. But overall, Atlanta, the slaying power from the SMG position was just too much. So after that Search and Destroy, easy cakewalk throughout the domination and throughout the hard point. As we move on to, if we go down here, the second semifinal matchup here. So we had Dallas versus Chicago. If we take a peek at that one, you'll see that this is exactly what I was thinking, right? The first thing I said in yesterday's video is that when it came to this Search and Destroy, I thought this is where the clear difference was. Guys, 2 weeks ago, or not even 2 weeks ago, a week ago, less than a week ago, we heard Arcity saying we don't even know how to play the game, and he was talking about Search and Destroy. And when you're talking from just a strategy standpoint, there aren't many out there like Clayster and Crim6, and especially they have Rambo as a coach. When you're talking about strategy and actually laying out how maps should be played, especially in Search and Destroy, there aren't very many people that do it better than them. So even if Chicago was able to win a couple of the respawns, I think they would have struggled down here. I just couldn't see them beating Dallas right now. I know they did it earlier in the year. A lot of people in the comments on my last video wanted to point out the results from earlier in the year, but that doesn't matter anymore. Chicago is slowly kind of tailing off a little bit, and Dallas is just getting better and better. And you can't just say that they're onliners because they played good at their last LAN event also. So with those two events, this wasn't close at all. At no point in time did I feel like, all right, this is like, as points were rotating in hardpoint and stuff like that, at no point when I was like, okay, this is where Chicago is going to win. I just felt like they were going to lose the whole time. The domination was a little bit close, right? They didn't lose by 50, but I don't know. To me, I just wasn't real impressed. So Chicago's got work to do, and I think they know that. And hopefully, as they go into their next events, they can kind of figure that out. Last one that we'll talk about, obviously, is going to be, as we look down here, Atlanta versus Dallas. And we ended up with Dallas as our winner. If we take a look at the map reviews here, so this also, if you take a look at this as a whole, the first thing that I really look at here is I look at this, right? You take a peek at the two hard points. Up until recently, nobody has been able to perform with Atlanta in Respawn game types. They've just been so dominant. They've been so elite that a lot of teams just can't hang with them. And I know that online is a big part of this, because in these Respawn game types, what are you seeing? You're slaying supreme slaying power out of people like Shotzi and Illy and Huke, right? The 3 young guns. And then actually you even saw Clayster and Crimsix play well also. But the problem that Atlanta poses for a lot of people is their slaying power. Heck, Simp dropping 49 earlier in the weekend and then dropping 50 yesterday. So that slaying power alone is something to deal with. But Dallas has the ability to do that, and they showed that in these Respawn game types by winning both hardpoints, winning the domination. And one of the other supreme parts of Atlanta's game is their search and destroy, and they showed this right here. They did take it to around 11, but again, earlier in the year, remember, it was the first couple events that Atlanta didn't even lose a round, right? I think at one point in time, Major Maniac had like a 14 kill death in search and destroy, and that's just absurd. We'll never see that again, obviously, because that's a ridiculous number to hold on to. But that just shows like how good they were early in the game. And even against who some might say is the best team right now, Dallas, they were able to take a surge from them. So I think overall, Atlanta still has a little bit of an edge when it comes to search and destroy. But I really wish that we could see a LAN event, because I want to see if Dallas can continue to replicate what they're doing right now. I want to see Shotzi. I want to see Illy in a LAN event. I want to see if they're still able to perform. I have a little bit more confidence in Illy than I do Shotzi, but that's not really all that important. So yeah, if we're looking at this as a whole, one thing that I'll say just from kind of this weekend is that I think I missed this matchup here. I missed that one, and I missed this one. Other than those 2 matchups, I got the rest of the bracket was filled out correctly. So I'll take that, right? I feel like most people would have probably predicted on day 1 for Chicago to beat New York. They probably would have predicted OGLA to beat LAG, and that's just not what happened. But other than that, I'm pretty excited with what I was able to do here with my predictions. So pretty good there. Last thing that we'll talk about real quick is our power ranking. So hopefully you guys can see this. This is as big as I can make it. I really tried to make it fit. I did my best. Hopefully you guys can see it. If not, hopefully I explain it well enough. But the first thing that I want to look at here is we're looking at the CDL points, right? So this column right here has Dallas with 150, Chicago with 130, Atlanta with 120, Minnesota, Florida with 100, and then it goes down from there. But what I want you guys to pay attention to is these 2 teams right here. So Chicago and Dallas have played 5 events. Seattle has played 5 events. And LAG has played 5 events. Everybody else has only played 4 events, okay? So I want you to keep that in mind, because although the CDL points look like how they do now, if Atlanta makes it to another final, then they'll be tied with Dallas. And if they end up winning that event, they'll have a 20-point lead over Dallas. So just kind of keep that in mind here as I'm going through my power rankings, because I want you guys to be aware of that. So power rankings, I'm not going to this isn't going to be scientific, right? I'm just going to kind of write on here because I didn't have this set up. I don't know. It just, the way I wanted to do it wasn't working out, so let's just do it this way. What I'll say is right now, I think Dallas is the number 1 team in the league. I don't think anybody could dispute that, the way that they've played the last few events, being our league's first time to tournament win champions. I think that we should be pretty comfortable with having Dallas up there at first. Now, 2 through 5 for me can go a lot of different ways. And I say that because I know a lot of you are probably going to disagree with me here, but the way that I'm feeling is that I think a lot of people would just shoe in Atlanta here for that 2nd overall in the power rankings. But the way that they've shown that they can get beat, at least online, and that's all that we have to go with here, in Respawn game types by both New York and through Dallas, doesn't give me as much confidence in them as I had just a couple short weeks ago. So I think now the problem with that is that I definitely don't think Chicago is number 2. And the other 2 teams that I would consider putting at number 2 are right here, is Minnesota and Florida. So what do you do with those? Has those 2 teams shown or been more impressive than Atlanta? For me, Minnesota has, especially anytime Atlanta and Minnesota match up. Minnesota just seems to have their number, right? And Florida has recently as well. So at number 2, even though you might think that, well, they haven't been the most dominant in some of their most recent games, I just love their consistency. I love their ability to win games under pressure. I think they do a really nice job at that. So I'm going to put Minnesota at 2. 3 and 4, honestly, for me, I don't have the confidence in Chicago anymore. I really want to see Chicago do well. I really like their players. I like their storylines. I love what Envoy's able to do. I want to see them do well, but I just don't have any confidence in them. So for whatever reason, I still have a little bit more confidence in Atlanta than I do Florida. So I'm going to put Atlanta at 3. I'm going to put Florida at 4, which for me bumps Chicago down to 5. And I know this doesn't look great, but hopefully you guys can follow it. I know it's not in order. Look, we're just kind of talking through the teams as we get there. But for me, Atlanta and Florida, they're really close there. I want to see just a little bit more out of Florida, especially with their new roster. And if they show just a little bit more, then maybe I'll think about moving them up even a little bit more. And Chicago, they've got to get it figured out, right? One of the things that I look at is if you look at games won and games lost, they're essentially winning about 65% of their games. And when you're looking at some of the other teams like Atlanta, they're up by like 77%. And when you look at Dallas, you'll say, well, they have 42 games won and 31 games lost. So their percentage is lower than Chicago's. But remember, a lot of those games happened at the beginning of the year, and they're not playing the same that they are now. So when I look at Chicago, I'm really just looking at what they've done the last 2 tournaments, and it hasn't been that impressive. Sure, they're making it to semifinals, but this is not a roster where you're happy with them making it to semifinals, right? You want to see them winning championships. And hopefully this is kind of a wake-up call. They can get back into, I want to say the gym, because that's just kind of, where you would work on things in like the typical sports world. But hopefully they can get back into their private lobbies and really talk things through, look at VODs and get it figured out from there. After that, I think there are 3 teams that are in that next bunch. So 6, 7, and 8. What I'll say from here, and remember, these are power rankings from right now. So in the standings here, you have Paris and you have London next, and then you have Seattle. I don't know how anybody could put Paris or London in terms of power rankings above Seattle. So for me, I've been super impressed with what Seattle's been able to do. Just this last weekend, London didn't really look that well, right? They were 2 games, lost both games, they were out. So I don't have a ton of faith in London. And at the last event that Paris played in, they didn't look very good also. So for now, I am going to put Paris at 7. I'm going to put London at 8. I think there's a distinct difference between those top 8 teams and the couple that are underneath them. So I want to see Paris. I want to see London do well again because they started the year really hot and they've just kind of been marginal the last couple events that they've been at. After that, you have the 4 teams that are left: OGLA, Toronto, New York, and LAG. I think without a doubt at number 9, you have to put New York. You could probably even put New York above London, maybe, if you're just talking about power rankings, because New York, the win that they had over Atlanta was super impressive to start this CDL Chicago. So if you're talking about like power rankings, I just want to see it be a little bit more consistent, right? A little bit more consistency out of New York, and I'll feel more confident in bumping them up just like I did with Seattle. And then after New York, I'm going to go ahead at 10. I'm going to put OGLA. I was a little bit disappointed with their performance over the weekend. I really did expect more out of them, especially since, so this is kind of like a what have you done for me lately approach to these power rankings. And as of late, before this tournament, OGLA has looked pretty decent, right? Especially at their home event. They had a lot of, they just looked really good. They had a lot of momentum behind them. So we'll put them at 10. And then I think LAG also had a couple nice wins, a couple nice performances. They just beat OGLA. And you're probably thinking, well, how could they beat OGLA and be ranked underneath them? Again, over the last 2 or 3 tournaments, I think OGLA has just performed better as a whole in those 3 tournaments. So we're going to put LAG at 11. And as has been the story all year, we're going to put Toronto at 12. They're not really showing me much of anything. They did have a nice performance against Chicago. I think that was CDL Dallas that they had a nice performance against Chicago. But other than that, I'm just not really seeing a ton out of them. So with that, guys, that's my power rankings. That's my bracket review. If you guys have stuck in for these videos, thank you so much. We're going to get back to the scrim analysis starting in tomorrow's upload. So if there's anything that you want to see, let me know down in the comments below what maps or modes you want to see. If this is your first time checking out my videos, I upload videos like this every single day. So make sure you hit that subscribe button. Again, any comments whatsoever, put them down below. Leave a like before you head on your way. I hope you guys enjoyed my coverage of CDL Chicago. I can't wait for the next one. So with that, guys, thank you so much. Leave a comment. Let me know what you're thinking. I will catch you in tomorrow's upload.